Super excited because Randy, you just stepped out and created your own boutique brokerage.
But some of the big things, again, back to that learning how to say no, everyone's trying to sell you shit. Everyone wants you to buy this fancy app or pay for this tool or sign up for these leads. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. And something I like to say is, there's no shortcut to success.
It sounds like your dad created a great legacy for you to kind of step into in a lot of ways.
All right. So today we're excited to welcome Randy Horn, the owner and the founder of Entourage Realty, a boutique real estate firm in Boston. Licensed since 2007, Randy has built a stellar reputation for his deep knowledge of Boston's neighborhoods and his client-first approach. Featured on the cover of Realtor magazine, his industry achievements and commitment to excellence make him a true standout in the real estate world. Specializing in both residential properties and investment, Randy is known for creating a personalized real estate entourage for his clients, guiding them through every step of the process with care and expertise. Beyond his success in transactions, Randy is passionate about building long-term relationships, mentoring other agents, and giving back to the community. Let's dive into his journey and learn more from his wealth of experience. Welcome, Real Estate Randy Horn. Yay! You like that? Yeah. We'll see if we keep
good.
that.
What more do I need to say? You covered it all.
So obviously we go back several years, all 30 and 30s, except they didn't let Wayne on the cover because they're trying to sell those things. Were you on the cover? You weren't on the cover, were you? They didn't let you on.
No.
They only let
made
me
the
on
website.
because I sent them a skinny picture and I showed up and they're like, you're not the same size.
Too late.
So I catfished them. But super excited because Randy, you just stepped out and created your own boutique brokerage, which is crazy, scary, crazy hard, crazy exciting, crazy in general. So just tell us a little bit about we don't need like the whole, what happened in the second grade, but maybe a little bit about background and like how it kind of all led up to what's
Sure.
going on.
Yeah, so where to begin? I mean, as my name indicates, Real Estate Randy, I like to say that real estate's in my blood. My father made his career owning and managing a small portfolio of real estate. So I was fortunate to be able to touch that and see that and experience that as a kid, to the point where I'd be going on Friday nights to the rooming house with my dad to collect weekly rents. So that was an experience, and also humbling because I grew up in a very affluent town that was just next door to the community where my father's properties were. So I got to see the benefit of how kind of both ends of the spectrum live, right? Because the town I grew up in, they say it's a bubble, but I had this outside experience because I could see the way other people live. So just having that perspective is something that's always helped me be empathetic with whoever I'm working with,
Right.
regardless of their background, income, class, whatnot. But in high school, I actually had an opportunity to intern with a real estate developer who was super impressed. He said, Randy, if you get your real estate license, I'll help you get started at the agency where I first started. So, man, I'm like, wow, this is great. What a great opportunity. I graduated high school on a Friday. Monday, I was enrolled taking classes to get my real estate license, passed the exam somehow, all right, at 18, and was kind of thrown into the mix working on Newbury Street, which is Boston's kind of premier real estate street where there's like dozens and dozens of offices. And I found this rental firm where, I'm going out showing people apartments and really had no idea what I was doing. People would ask a simple question like, what utilities are included with this apartment? And I'm like, gee, that's a really good question. I'm like, I don't know. I've never lived in an apartment. So I always joke I got more parking tickets than I did rental transactions, but I cut my teeth there. Yeah, throughout the summers while I was going to college, when I was home back in Boston for the summers, I found another office where I got some better training and did learn how to successfully rent apartments. And that was a great start. I also helped my brother and a really close friend get their license and start working at the firm I was at. So at an early age, I was seeing ways I could help others and get a little rip off their action.
Yeah.
After college, towards the end, my senior year of college, I went to the University of Colorado, and I was introduced to this very interesting boutique commercial real estate brokerage where the business model was unique in that we were looking for distressed off-market commercial assets across all different types of assets, whether specifically we focused on student housing and senior living. But here I am, now I'm 22, right? I'm calling the president of, maybe these weren't publicly traded companies because we needed to find properties that could be sold off market. But here I am talking to the president of some very successful real estate company saying, we identified your property and would you ever consider selling? And they're like, who is this guy? Where are you from? So, I got a million no's before I got a maybe, and learned as much as I could from my mentor at the time there. Commercial real estate, while it's very exciting, the volume of transactions you're working with, they are so difficult to see them to fruition because a lot of those transactions are contingent upon zoning approval, getting permits in hand and stuff. So after quite a while, I was ready to transition to something else. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, whether or not I wanted to stay in real estate. I was a little lost, I got to say, around 22, 23, around that time frame. But then a friend of mine actually started his own brokerage, residential brokerage, and here I am back in residential real estate. Commercial real estate's a small kind of boys club, very exclusive. Residential real estate, everyone's got their license and their mom too. So to go to the other end of the spectrum, and then I was doing student rentals, was really like a full 180. But at the same time, I started having fun again because here I am helping college students secure apartments, and I'm explaining to their co-signers, their parents, why their son or daughter's bedroom rent portion is more than their mortgage wherever they were coming from. And but I found success there, and rented 80 apartments 1 year here in Boston. We have a very big, September 1st is a big move date. So I had 40 move-ins on September 1st. And so I really got my feet wet. I like to say came up through the trenches.
Yeah.
And then I realized that residential sales was where I was meant to be, where I could have a much bigger impact on a more significant transaction. And instead of focusing on quantity over quality, I really started to take a client-centric approach of investing in relationships over transactions and seeing the long game of, this is someone who I want to keep in touch with because, they might be renting an apartment today, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, they might be ready to buy. So that's someone I'm going to want to keep in touch with. And that's how my career kind of blossomed into sales. And I'll take a pause there.
Yeah.
But those are the roots of how I got started.
Dang, dude. I didn't realize you were so heavy in the rental side at first. And just to explain, because I know most people understand how rentals work, but like my market, we don't have rental agents, right? People call us all the time moving to the South, like, hey, can you help me find a rental? I'm like, not really. Like, I can give you a list of companies that own rentals or manage them, and you can call them. So, it's lucrative though. You're able to make a living off of just finding rentals.
Yeah, so in Boston, the typical fee to rent an apartment is the broker fee is equal to 1 month's rent. Now, a lot of times that gets split between two, the agent who's working for the landlord, the agent, and then the agent who brings the tenant. And I was probably 50-50. The company I was with had a portfolio of buildings that needed to be leased every year. But then I decided, instead of focusing where that office was, which was kind of attracting like a student clientele, I had clients who wanted to be in kind of more affluent neighborhoods. And that's when I started to focus on, the couple moving into a 1-bedroom for, the same prices, helping 3 or 4 guys get the frat house apartment. Because again, coming from that commercial background, I was like, I need more challenges. I want to learn. I want to get into development and sales and these things. And so I could see my future was not just doing rentals for forever.
Yeah.
But by all means, you can make $100,000 plus running around doing rentals. It feels like, it's quick money, so to speak, right? You're making a couple grand every time you rent an apartment, even though my splits in my brokerage were like around 50%. It was a lot of running around. But where that translated to future success is when you know what properties rent for all across the city, when you're working with someone who's thinking about, I want to rent this place out later. Because I didn't start working with investors, it was mostly working with home buyers first. But of course they want to know, hey, when we move out of the city into the burbs, what do you think we can rent this for? So to be able to say, this will rent for $3,500, I know that because I rented this unit downstairs or across the street. It really keeps you in tune and up to date with the market. similarly, as that helped me decide where I wanted to invest, and that helped me build my small rental portfolio as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you're dying, Wayne. You haven't talked in like 3 minutes, so you got to say something.
I'm just a pretty face. You know what I mean? I'm just here to make the podcast look good.
I think we both do
So
that.
Randy, are you out of the commercial side kind of altogether? And what led to that? How did you feel about that? I mean, I know a lot of agents like, I want to get into commercial. And I'm like, yeah. What led you to not try to do both? And what's been good about that?
Yeah, so I've learned I got to stay in my lane. I'm good at what I do and efficient at what I do. I'd much rather focus my efforts on where I know I can be successful, but I don't like to tell anyone, no, I can't help you. So having the resources, the people to refer them to is great, because having, I'm happy to collect a referral fee for just introducing someone to a commercial agent who that's their focus. So that's something I learned along my career as well, was learning how to say no and when to say no, and the power that comes from that. I think early in my career, I tried to be everything to everyone. And now when people ask me, oh, I'm looking for office space, or I want to open a storefront or whatnot, that's really not my specialty. Even, I will also say, like, I'm careful working with investors too, because they're always searching for the perfect transaction, the perfect pro forma, and it's really hard to find that here in Boston. So I've actually found my sweet spots helping traditional buyers and sellers navigate the emotional journey of moving. And also, my business, it's not really reflective of what's happening with necessarily interest rates, the economy, elections and stuff. My clients are moving when their life necessitates. And that's typically through employment opportunities, families growing or shrinking, and things of that nature, rather than like, oh, we've been waiting for rates to fall and now's a good time for us to consider moving. So, but that's maintaining those long-term relationships and knowing that, oh, that family just had another child. They're going to they can't stay in that 2-bedroom condo forever. Right. So just keeping in touch, not saying, hey, you guys ready to move?
So real quick, what does your business look like right now as far as like people and transactions and things like that? Just so we have an idea.
Yep. So right now, behind me, I've got 2 associate agents, I'll call them, who I realized years ago, back in 2017, I realized I need to build a team, not so that I can make money off these hungry individuals, but more so that I can keep going at the speed that I need to go, because my biggest problem is I can't be in more than one place at once. And I'm also a generalist. I don't just focus on one neighborhood. So there's times where I've got clients looking south of Boston and others who are looking north of Boston. And so to have someone that can hold their hand and open a door down in one area when I'm in another, it increases my bandwidth and my productivity significantly. So right now I've got 2 people helping me, and they'll be included on listings to run open houses so that I can be out with buyers. This year, we're going to sell about 20. I'll sell about 20 homes. Fortunate to live in the great city of Boston, which always ranks like top 3 in terms of most expensive markets. So I don't need to sell 1 million homes.
God dang it. I remember when I was in Alaska and I was selling on these, people like, how many homes? I'm like, it was insane. I was selling $130 house, or, $130,000, I was like, dear Lord, you had to sling a crap ton of those things. It drove me crazy.
Dude.
All right. So it sounds like you pissed greatness and it's all been easy. Here's what I want to know. I would love to know, like, Randy's biggest fuck ups. Like, what have been the 2 or 3 things you're like you learned a lot from, but like, what were like 1 or 2? I'm sure you've had some, right? Where you're like, God, why did I spend 10 grand on that, or whatever that was? Like, what have been 1 or 2 of those things you're like, you learned a lot from that other people can kind of collapse time from learning, from yours?
Yeah. Fortunately, there's no one pivotal lesson I learned that was, that really was a turning point in my career. But some of the big things, again, back to that learning how to say no. Everyone's trying to sell you shit. Everyone wants you to buy this fancy app or pay for this tool or sign up for these leads. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. And something I like to say is, there's no shortcut to success. There's no elevator to success. You got to take the stairs. And so you want to be 10 steps ahead in your business, but you got to take all 10 of those steps. So learning how to be patient and just locked in for the long haul.
So what's kind of your metric to say yes or no to something? Like, do you have any principles you hold on to that help you when it comes to like either being involved in something or spending money? Like, what's the one or two questions that kind of roll through your brain when you're thinking like, do I do it? Do I not do it?
Yeah. Well, ROI first off, but
you actually do math. Hold on. Okay. So you actually do some math. Okay. Everybody, I want you to write that down. Do the freaking math, right? Like actually go like, what would it take to, anyway, sorry. That's a whole,
well,
it's a whole
yeah,
book
I hear
I
you,
need to
Wayne,
write.
but at the same time, I mean, a lot of it is, it's not numbers based. It's the relationship. Who is this person that needs to find an apartment right now? And like I said, I don't really do the apartment rentals, but you never know, like that could lead to you never know who their parents are or when they're going to be ready in a year from now to buy the big house or whatnot. So there are some investments you make that that might not make sense on a dollar per hour basis long term. It goes back to the relationship. And so there's people who I'll be eager to help, that don't have $1 million budget, let's say, but they were referred from so-and-so and they're well connected. It's decisions like that. Where I'll say no is, what are they asking me to do? If it's too far, there's a good example. If it's too far outside the city, I'm not driving an hour and a half both ways. And, my time is not best spent in the car. It's good because I can take phone calls and stuff and listen to my audiobooks and, my podcasts and a couple tunes here and there. But no, I've learned to be very efficient with my time. Even just the fact that we're, having this conversation today from the comfort of my home means I'm not wasting time commuting, finding parking, things like that. So a lot of those lessons came out of COVID, actually.
Mm-hmm.
When that office closed down, my income doubled, as a matter of fact. And I learned that, going into the office, all I do is talk with my colleagues and chop it up, and it's fun. And yeah, occasionally you'll get a whiff of what someone's working on, but most of the time, you're not talking with clients. I'm not getting things done. We used to be, the office I was in, we had 5 floors and I was on the 5th floor. And I'd say hi to everyone on the 5th, then go down to the 4th, do the same thing, 3rd, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Then I go back up, do it again, and then it'd be lunchtime. I'm like, oh.
I've always said it takes 3 hours to get a cup of coffee in a real estate office. I don't know why that is. You go to get a cup of coffee in a real estate office, it's like 3 hours. You're like, what the heck happened? Also, one more question. I'll let Brad jump in. You've done so good with your people. How do you keep in touch with your database? Is such a cold term.
Yeah.
But with the people you give a rip about, like, I imagine you're somewhat strategic. You really give a rip, but I imagine you also have some strategy or intentionality around that.
I wish I could say, I am not one of the, there's all sorts of formulas. You need to touch someone X amount of times per year or whatnot. And sadly, I don't follow that. What's worked for me is, I use my social media so people see that I'm active in real estate, that I'm, a normal human being. I go to the beach, things like that. I like to travel and eat out, things like that. But when you see other people having life events, to reach out, and rather than something I learned long ago, rather than just clicking like, to pick up the phone and call them and say, wow, I can't believe you're already, having your second child. That's incredible. Things like that. People remember that. And just keeping in touch and being intentional about it. I don't send out much marketing info about rates or, market stats, because people are only thinking about buying for a short period. And outside of that, it's just noise. And that's an easy way to get tuned out. If all you're talking about is interest rates and they just bought a home a year ago, that's not really adding any value to them. So I like to highlight, like with my social media, I like to highlight things that I find entertaining, like, I don't know, funny stuff, like realtor humor stuff that people can really appreciate. And then around the holidays, I always send out a holiday card that I think is just a good reminder. And usually there's a magnet that ends up on the fridge and things like that. And I go into their home months later and I see my magnets and I know I'm in a safe place. And but also I do that to businesses too. There's a great coffee shop down the road. I go in there and they just got my holiday card with a magnet in it, and it's right on their cash register. And the coffee shop next door to that, they've got my magnet up on their refrigerator there. And it's things like that it makes me happy. Other people see it and they take a picture and send it to me, or they see my sticker or my magnet on the back of a car. And so I think it's always important to be branding. People know me as Real Estate Randy. They don't They're not looking there. When they think of real estate, they think of me. And that typically is around when their lives necessitate it, not just, I'm not here to act like I'm the source for all your economic news with regards to real estate. You know, if they want a personalized approach, they should reach out to me.
Yeah. Well, so let's pivot gears a little bit. And I know you just opened up Entourage, and you're going into a new chapter, and you've had a lot of chapters along the way, a lot of, trials and tribulations. Like, what do you think some of those trials and tribulations have really helped you with to set you up to where you are now? Because you've had a rough couple of years.
Yeah, perspective. When you're going through a difficult transaction or a tough quarter or something, you need to be able to take a step back and see the forest from the trees. And, the world's not going to end if this doesn't close on time, or if you don't have a record-breaking year or whatnot. You got to keep it in perspective, and, your happiness too. I made a decision that I don't want to miss life events because of work. So I'd rather hand something off and or refer it out, because I don't want to miss, my niece's birthday party or an opportunity to go to a bachelor party or whatever it may be. We only live once, and I want to get the most out of life. So I'm sure you've all seen that saying that, you're never going to look back and wish you worked more. I'm big on not making, reckless. I'm very careful with the money I spend and my time so that I can use it and spend it where I want. So, but there's also been times where I've fired clients because it's just not worth their expectations of what they think my role is don't align with how I typically work. Yeah. And so I try to have a very structured process with my clients, because I know if we follow these steps, we're going to be successful. If we just try to wing it, that's a sure recipe for disaster. And I always like to quote that Alad Bouchard used to say, a fellow 30, he'd say, don't wing it, because unpredictable results leads to unpredictable income. So showing up with a plan is a much better way to ensure that it's going to be a good use of your time.
So if you were so I've got a question, because I train and coach internally, not like Wayne. Wayne coaches agents. But I feel like you can't learn that lesson, like how valuable your time is, until you got to a certain level, right? Because it's funny, I have new agents that come in, they're like, I don't have time for that. And you're like, well, honestly, you have all the time for that. But also, you don't want to set them up for failure and make them just grind their face off 20 hours a day. So do you think you can gain perspective in real estate until you've gotten to a certain level of real estate?
That's a great question. In my 20s, and especially striving for the 30 under 30 award, I did everything. I signed up for every committee I could. I went to every networking event, broker opens. I wanted to shake as many hands as I could. And I was also single at the time, so it was no problem being out 4 or 5 nights a week. That changes when you are in a relationship, have a little bit more success in your business. So again, prioritizing what's most important, I think is key. And in my 30s, I learned that I'm not sure I want to be the $1 million agent. I see what that costs. I see what it takes to do that. The infrastructure you need in place, there's a cost for everything. And something I really am proud of is I've always kept my overhead really low, so I don't have the underlying stress of, I need to close X amount or else I'm going to be underwater. And I see a lot of agents make that mistake where they have a hot year, they buy toys, they lease a car, they buy a boat, they move, whatever it is. And then, and meanwhile, they're not reinvesting in their business. They're not making the calls they need to. Things slow down. And then, you bump into them at an open house and they're like, it's so hard right now. And and it's frustrating, but anytime I've had money, I've put it into real estate to practice what I preach, double down, and have that passive income. Because I knew from the very beginning, seeing and watching my father find success, is that real estate was always kind of my day job, or being a broker was kind of a day job, and my main goal was to be an investor, to have with the ultimate goal having the passive income exceed the active income.
So would there be any advice you'd go back and give yourself in your 20s? I mean, it sounds like you had a great mentor with your dad who's already kind of walked that path, but I was having a conversation with an agent the other day, and I was like, literally, I realized I didn't want to hire him. Not because he's a bad person, but he's 22. I started when I was 22, and I went to walk out, and I was like, you know what? No. So I sat back down, and I was like, listen, there's one thing I can tell you right now. You're from a family that knows a lot of people in this town. You start investing in your database today. Don't wait 10 years, because he's trying to help an agent do more business. So he's kind of like their admin. I'm like, dude, you're going to piss away 10 years. This guy's going to die or not give you his business. Dude, get on your... So I pulled an old man card, man. Like, I felt bad about it, but I just felt like I couldn't get away from it. Do you have any advice like that?
Well, that is really interesting because most, and people reach out to me, they want to figure out how to get into real estate. And usually their number one concern is, well, how am I going to write a contract? And I'm like, that's the last thing you need to worry about because negotiating and, writing offers is like the smallest part of what we actually do. The biggest part is prospecting for clients and building those relationships. So part of me is like, I need to find someone who is the valedictorian, like the most popular, who had a genuine person, because they're the type of people that people genuinely like being around. And then if they can demonstrate that they're knowledgeable and good at what they do, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to sell tons of homes. Although, the other thing you said, and I think if I had to go back and start over again, rather than go through the rentals, I would probably find that all-star agent where you can just say, hey, listen, I am here to learn everything I can from you. I don't care if I make a dime these next 2 years. I just want to see how you operate, and I know it's going to pay off. And just be hungry and humble. You need to recognize there's so much you don't know. And there's times where I'm patting myself on the back like, oh, I'm really proud of how I handled that situation. But other times where I'm like, man, there's still a lot more I got to learn. And so just recognize that you need to be proud of the steps you take, but also humble to recognize you got a long way to go. And you should always be learning. And when you look around and realize you're not learning anything from the people you're surrounded with, you got to change your circle.
Yeah. Amen to that. It's funny, man. That hits on so many parts. Just being in the business so long. And, I've had agents who'll be like, yes, I drive a nice car. It's more of a tax reason than anything else. But they're like, man, must be nice to be a broker. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. What I think you meant to say was, it must be nice to fucking bust your ass for 20 fucking years and get to where the fuck I am. So if you'd like to learn, I'm happy to show you. If you want to be a bitch about it, I'll fucking kick you out.
If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And I think what's can be confusing is that we make it look easy. When we only show the highlight reel, not the behind the scenes, it's easy to think, wow, look how easy they make it. That's another thing I tried to be careful of, is I never like to flaunt the success I've achieved through hard work. I like showing the kind of grittier side to get there. And especially when, like this week, I'm looking over a drain cleaner's shoulder while he's unclogging a main stack for my, because my tenants had, their sink was backed up, and like, that's humbling. And I like seeing that side of the business too. I like to get my hands a little dirty too.
So take us into Entourage. What's the idea behind it? What it came about? Whatever you want to share about it, but you don't have to share all the backstory if you don't want to.
Sure. Well, let's start with the name Entourage. No, it's not just because the show's pretty awesome. But we were thinking of names, and at first I was, I didn't want to overcomplicate it, so I was going to go with Horn Realty. And my wife, who has a marketing background, drew this really cool trombone with horn and Horn Realty. And I wanted to get away from Real Estate Randy, because while it really helped me get to where, all the steps I was able to take, if I'm going to think about adding agents in the future, I want them to be able to grow their own business. And if it's just the Real Estate Randy brokerage, then every client's just going to want Real Estate Randy. And so that was my first decision, was that I wanted it to be, I wanted my name off it. But then Entourage itself, I love the definition. It's a group that surrounds an important person or a celebrity. And I feel like that's the way we treat our clients. We're here. A lot of times our clients don't know anything about home buying or selling. And that's the way I like it, because I'm here to, you found me, and now I'm going to put all the people in place to make this process as seamless as possible. And they're always going to be at the center of it. So once the name kind of clicked, I was like, you know what, I'm going to run with this. Why I decided to open the brokerage? Well, about where to begin. I knew I always wanted to get my broker's license. I really didn't think I was going to do anything with it once I got it. The idea of running an office and dealing with all the administrative things and bookkeeping and things like that, I'm like, I don't have time for that. Like, I want to be selling real estate. So for that reason, I was always willing to pay the brokerage I was working under in exchange to let me run my business, because candidly, I didn't have any headaches. Everything moved pretty smoothly. But then as it came time to renegotiate my contract, I started to realize that I'm working in a really big corporate organization where I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, and my manager doesn't have the authority to grant my wishes. She's got to talk to her managers, got to talk to their managers, got to talk to Wall Street. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm just a little cog in the wheel here. And I need the autonomy to run my business. I mean, listen, there's times where I'll throw in a little commission to get a deal done. And oftentimes that's Sunday night at 8 p.m. I can't wait till I get my manager's approval to greenlight that. And so I need to run my business the way I see fit. So that was overall, that was kind of the biggest thing, was the autonomy. I didn't interview with any other brokerages. I could have gone and got a better split somewhere, but I decided now's the time for me to control my own destiny, because I'm going to be doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I also don't want someone over my back saying I need to hit these quotas, or you're not going to get this, or we're going to take this back. So that was another thing. Really what helped me commit to this new direction was the fact that time worked out really well with my wife, who has a background in finance, operations, and marketing before. And she also had a real estate license. So before, when people would ask,
sounds like a perfect woman, by the way. Perfect woman.
I know.
And she's beautiful.
Lord. Yes.
And she cooks phenomenally. Like, I really got lucky there.
Wayne wants to know if she has a sister.
Where did you find this? Like, how the heck, dear Lord?
Yeah, well, when I met my wife, I was out at a networking event, a holiday party, and I saw a broker who I was friends with, and we were catching up. And then she looks over and she says, "You want to meet my friend?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I started talking to now my wife, and I was like, "So what's your story?" And she was like, "Well, I'm getting my real estate license." And I'm like, she's like, "And I've been working as a dating consultant." I'm like, "Oh man, we've got to talk," because I was helplessly single. But yeah, there was times where people said, "Why doesn't your wife work with you?" And I didn't really see there wasn't enough, like, my business isn't spilling over where I need help in that regard. So I never really entertained that I just thought more as a conflict than it could get messy or whatnot. But as we thought about starting Entourage, it's like, okay, well, she can run all this back end stuff, the finance, the marketing, and so I can just focus on sales. So that's when it really clicked and dawned on me, like, yeah, what have I got to lose? And if it doesn't work out, I can go back to wherever I was, or, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Yeah.
And something I realized is, the company I was with, they had great tools and they were very tech forward. But at the end of the day, real estate remains a relationship-based business. And none of my business was coming from my brokerage. So yeah, at a certain point, you have to look around, and when you own all your business is referral based and repeat clients, I had to have faith in myself. I'll bet on myself all day long.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I realized, what have I got to lose? And I'm happy to say, like, this closing I have next week, my first closing, what I'm saving on that transaction is going to pay back all my startup costs. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't easy. I mean, it's pretty easy to get your salesperson license. A lot of us could probably argue that it should be harder. But the process to go through starting a business and getting your broker's license was not easy. And if I was doing it on my own solo, it would have cost a lot more money. Because the two things people said to be wary of, one was your startup costs, where if you're hiring an admin, you're paying for web services and web design and leasing an office space. These are all really big overhead items, which I'm fortunate, we're running a virtual model now and it's working just fine. But I also think there's a lot of fear mongering from brokers who, don't want you to become competition. So they tell you how hard it is. But it was certainly a lot of work, a big leap of faith, but I was ready to bet on myself. And if not now, then when? I look back at all the money I spent over the past 6 years while I was with my broker. And if I waited another few years, it's a lot of money left on the table that, now, so I'm really looking forward to 2025.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, obviously, I run an independent, and it is some fear mongering that goes out there, but I also think it's fear mongering because people don't have an identity when it comes to real estate, and they open up a brokerage that's very similar to other brokerages, and then their value proposition to agents are just higher splits. That's cool, but then, as you just said, you got overhead, then there's expectations, and then there's support, and it gets really expensive when you're making 3 cents on the dollar, right? So that's the hard part.
So yeah, my biggest motivation, I guess, first and foremost, was my cost savings by not having that big overhead of paying a brokerage. I think the value prop to potential agents is, here's how I can show you how I've built this.
Yeah, it's you. Yeah.
Authentic. Well, but I don't have any secret sauce. None of my practices are proprietary.
No,
I'm an open book.
But you prove that the way you do it works. And a lot of people preach it, but they've never been there. So I talk to agents all day long, and their broker is some washed up, white-haired so-and-so, which I will be someday. I know this. I'm getting there. But that they've never sold more than 20 houses in our market, right? They don't know how to fill out a new construction contract because they're a babysitter. So to be a broker that's actually accomplished it, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Sorry to cut you off, Wayne, but
no, you're good. Go.
Sometimes I used to have a broker that I would look up to and ask questions of and seek advice. And then I realized once I went to this bigger brokerage, I realized I had to find that outside. I had to find it myself because I wasn't getting it from my manager who, they're a salaried employee. It's just not the same as when you're dealing with a business owner who is invested in your success. And so that's the skill set I want to provide other agents and show them how I'm able to charge higher fees and make more dollars per hour, if you will, doing the same amount of work, even selling fewer homes and having a great quality of life. I think that's really what I'm proud of.
For sure.
Well, I love that. I had two questions for you. One was, what are you working on right now? Like, what do you want to be better at by this time next year?
Now it's focusing on how to build the brokerage. I think a year from now, I would like to have 2 or 3 more agents who I need to find the right mix, right? Because I don't want someone who's super green that's going to be a liability and is fumbling their way forward. I need someone who's already proven that they know what they're doing. Now, I don't want to give them a 180, but even just turning their business 10 degrees is going to accelerate, their trajectory. So that's what I'm excited about, is finding the right people and maintaining that culture of people who are inspiring to be around. No negativity that can kind of be cancerous in an office environment or gossip culture. I can't do that. I mean, I always thought work is work and you do your job and you go home to your family. Work isn't where you go to find fun. I mean, that doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy the people you work around, but we need to be supporting one another and building each other up, not talking about who did this or who did that or, gossiping.
Well, and I think that ties into my other question, which is like, it sounds like your dad created a great legacy for you to kind of step into in a lot of ways, right? Like what are you working towards? What do you want to leave? Like, what is Real Estate Randy? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to leave in this, what are you trying to create?
I think ultimately I want to be remembered for the agent who cared about everyone and the guy who got to the top of the ladder and turned around and helped the next people up. I think there's so much, there's plenty of money to go around and people to help that, I've always been the type that wants to collaborate, not pull other people down like a crab in a bucket. So if I can be remembered as someone who helped shape someone's business because they realized, it isn't just about making cold calls, it's about building authentic relationships and improving the way people view realtors, because it always breaks my heart when you see people who rag on realtors as just like leeches, just money hungry, transactionally oriented individuals. And I know, like the relationships I built with my clients, man, I'm getting invited to holiday parties and christenings and weddings and things like that, where I'm helping them through such an important milestone in life, whether that's achieving home ownership for the first time. A first generation homeowner is huge, but then also giving back is something I've always also focused on. Long ago, I had a instrumental broker who said, here's a way you can start winning some business. Talk about giving back to a charity that your clients support when you close a deal. I like that idea. And so I made a commitment to it. Hey, the first day I'm meeting someone, I'm saying, when we're ultimately successful, if there's a charity or nonprofit you support, I'd be honored to make a donation in your name. That became a lot more personal through a family tragedy, where now my nephew, a nonprofit was created to honor my nephew's legacy. And so to be able to give back there, it just shows that, that there's a lot more. It's bigger than just real estate. And when you can find out what's important to your clients and causes near and dear to their heart, it's it's one of the main reasons why I do this is because you can just make such an impact on someone's life.
What's your nephew? What is the nonprofit?
So my nephew's charity is called the Max McCormick Memorial Foundation. To tell you a little bit about, I think it's probably worth noting, if you'll allow me to kind of share the story about my nephew.
Yeah, please.
For sure.
I think let's go back to 2018 because there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. And prior to then, it was a few years before that where I started this charity initiative of giving back. And I had supported some great organizations. I was really involved with Home Start, a local nonprofit that prevents homelessness. 2018 was such a monumental year for me and my business. It was the year I achieved 30 under 30. I moved to a new brokerage. They flew me out to Chicago and put me on the cover of Realtor magazine. It was incredible. Similarly, I was awarded the cover of a more local Boston agent magazine. And so here I am having all this success and literally like smiling on magazine covers. I didn't think it could get much better. But 2018 ended in tragedy. It was around this time in 2018, coming home from the holidays, I was involved in a car accident, and I was in the car with my sister's family. And my nephew was sitting right behind me. He was 4 years old, Max, and we got T-boned by a truck going down some icy roads. And back to putting things in perspective, someone once said to me, if your life was going to change in a blink of an eye, or, like a gun to your head moment, and I'm like, I've been there. Like I watched that truck crash into us. And the fact that I was able to get out of that car and walk and be unharmed. And unfortunately, my nephew was not so lucky. He, 3 weeks later, he passed away from the complications from the accident. And my whole life kind of was rocked, my whole family. So you have to take a step back from real estate, right? And I had to pull back from a lot of things. It was a dark time. It was the beginning of winter 2019. And my world as I know it, I mean, I had just turned 30. Like everything in my life I was on top of the mountain. And all of a sudden here I am facing a tragedy. And I wasn't prepared for it. Nothing can prepare you for that. And I found comfort in my family. I just got as close as I could to spending time with my family. I had to say no to a lot of things that I just couldn't put my heart into. Committees I was on, I was like, I can't sit here in this meeting and pretend I'm like listening. So learning how to say no to things and protecting my time and prioritizing family was my number one priority. Another tragedy I didn't know that I was going to be facing at the time was my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so while trying to protect my mental health as best as I could, it was so challenging because trying to be there for my father and my mother and seeing the agony that they're going through and all the changes that are happening rapidly, it was a very dark period. But I had to figure out how to turn this negative into a positive. So with my nephew's foundation, I'm so proud of my sister and my brother-in-law because in order to honor my nephew's legacy, his dream was always to be a firefighter. And he drew this fire truck, and that's the logo for the charity. But so the Max McCormick Memorial Foundation was created to support firefighters in our local communities and their families. And so now after every transaction, not only do I make a donation to a charity of my client's choice, but I always donate to my nephew's foundation. And that's led to a lot of fire awareness education for children primarily, and also providing some life-saving equipment to different fire departments, and then being involved, throwing fundraisers. And instead of making events just about, anytime I can make an event a fundraiser instead of just like, hey, come have a drink, but like, let's do it for a cause.
Yeah.
That's been what I've decided to put my efforts behind. And that's also allowed me to say, we get so many people want a piece of us.
Yep.
Can you donate to this? Can you donate to that? I've learned to find the strength to say no to a lot of that because I've got my focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, being there for family is so important. And so it definitely took a couple of years of overcoming severe grief, and it's really hard to see your family go through a struggle and feel helpless. Sadly, my mother passed away just about a year ago. And it was a little bittersweet because she was really suffering. And so to see her finally at peace was comforting, but I used it as inspiration. And then going into this year, I said, you know what, I'm finally I'm going to take this broker's exam, which I did. I dedicated to my studies, and I was like, I'm only taking this once. So I committed to that. I got back into the gym. I traded my last gym membership for a Costco membership during COVID. So it was finally an excuse to, lose that 20 pounds of COVID weight. And I found a lot of the gym kind of became a vice of mine because I could go there. And for some reason this year also seemed to have the most challenging transactions where just so many frustrations that were totally outside my control. But I realized, like, let me focus on what I can control. And I can get my ass to the gym, and I can eat right, and I can dedicate myself to my studies, and I can be there for my clients. And there's a lot I can't control, like with these NAR lawsuits and new changes and things like that. And I can't control interest rates or the political climate, but I know I can control my own actions and my own emotions too. Learning how to control your emotions when times are tough or when people are screaming at you or whatever. But yeah, the gym proved to be a really great place for me to let out a lot of this frustration and just,
Well, I think that's what makes you successful though, right? I mean, the people that say, hey, I'm going to control what I can control, and then I'll just deal with what I can't, either through physical exertion, right, or downtime. But I think it's the agents or the people in life that the world sucks. This is why my sales suck. And you're like, nah, dog, sales suck. I get it. That means I may have to do 2 more, right? Or 3 more. I think that is a quality right there that you possess. And I think a lot of people possess, they don't realize it, that makes you successful because you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do is look in the mirror. That's usually the biggest thing standing in your way. There's a lot of things you can do before, again, instead of looking for the easy way out of either buying this lead or doing that, I would look at yourself and say, well, did you make the calls you needed to do? Did you show up for the people who need you? How seriously are you taking this? Things like that. So being introspective is really helpful, and to recognize where you could have, looking back on lessons learned and seeing or finding what the lesson was. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't really solve for crazy people, which come with this industry. But a lot of times there are lessons that a lot of times it goes back to how do you set expectations?
Yep.
And how do we prepare for what we don't know could arrive?
Yeah. I like to tell my agents, like, if your clients are crazy, it's your fault, right? Unless you did everything right, you set expectations, and then, they're probably just crazy. But like, them being crazy is not the first excuse, right? There are some legitimately crazy people, but usually it's not that. You haven't set an expectation, you didn't show up when you're supposed to, you weren't there when they needed you, whatever it might be. But after that, then they're just batshit crazy.
It happens. It happens. Some deals are more stressful than they need to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, aren't thinking with ration, but you got to find a lesson in everything so you can say, how do we avoid this issue going forward? Well, if we had talked about this, if we knew this was going to be something we were going to, if there's something we could have anticipated, how do we prepare for the next one? And that's something I'll tell the clients who, when I start working with new clients, I'll say, listen, you get the benefit of all my cumulative experience because no 2 transactions are the same. And I've certainly learned things along the way back then that, are not going to slow us down going forward.
Yeah. So, well, and with all the people that the 3 of us interact with, like teaching people to have intentional reflection, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we give them, right? Like whether it's your agents, your clients, like intentional reflection is one of the greatest gifts that you can give someone, to teach them how to do that. And because it's an incredible gift that most people weren't taught how to do that, to sit and go, what did I do good? What did I not do great? What do I need to do different next time? Like just spending a moment in intentional reflection is so powerful. But dude, thank you for being so real. I mean, we freaking love you. Thank you for being such a great example. I mean, you always show up happy, high five, and ready to help, whatever it is. Like you're humble and a freaking rock star. So, dude, it's I love being in your world, having you part of the community, and thank you for all you're doing. Seriously, you're such and you're gonna leave a badass legacy, and it's pretty cool, dude. Pretty cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm fortunate to be in your company. Again, surrounding yourself with the right people and eliminating the people that are going to root against you. It's, how do you want to spend your time? I think is what's really important. And so it's an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely.